America is being hit by a deeply personal crisis, one that reaches right into the kitchens and dinner tables of millions of households. Grocery stores, once the most dependable and routine part of everyday life, are vanishing far faster than anyone ever expected. Families are now forced to drive long distances just to buy basic items like milk, while parents carefully stretch every dollar as food prices continue to rise. In many neighborhoods, the final nearby supermarket has already closed for good. What was once a quick, familiar trip to pick up groceries has turned into a daily battle just to put food on the table. This goes far beyond normal inflation. It's a quiet but growing emergency, one that exposes just how vulnerable the country has become when access to food can disappear almost overnight. Number 12. Seattle, Washington. Seattle, one of the richest tech-driven cities in the world, is now unraveling in ways that are stunning even longtime locals. Grocery stores are shutting down so quickly that the city itself is struggling to keep up. In 2026, the metro area recorded nearly 24 grocery closures, including major chains like QFC and Safeway, along with long-standing regional stores that had served their neighborhoods for generations. For a city that prides itself on innovation and growth, the sudden failure to sustain basic food retailers points to a much deeper and far more dangerous economic break. The financial math behind these closures is unforgiving. Operating costs for a mid-sized grocery store in Seattle have surged by more than 42% since 2021. Electricity bills alone, which once averaged around $17,000 a month, now regularly exceed $33,000. Commercial rents in key parts of the city have climbed to between $48 and $52 per square foot, placing Seattle among the most expensive retail markets in the entire country. On top of that, theft, once an annoyance stores could manage, has tripled since 2020. Some grocers are now spending over $80,000 a year on security just to slow the bleeding. For supermarkets that survive on razor-thin margins of just 1 to 2%, these pressures aren't obstacles. They're fatal. But this collapse isn't spread evenly across the city. In affluent neighborhoods like Queen Anne and Capitol Hill, upscale grocery boutiques are still doing well. Meanwhile, South Seattle, Rainier Valley, and parts of West Seattle are slipping rapidly into full-scale food deserts. Many residents now travel 7 to 10 miles just to reach a full-service supermarket. For families who depend on public transportation, getting groceries can consume an entire afternoon. For those without cars, this isn't a minor inconvenience. It's an economic stranglehold. Food insecurity across the Seattle metro has now climbed to nearly 30%, the highest level ever recorded in modern Washington state history. At the same time, the city's booming tech economy continues to widen the divide between high-income districts and communities where access to food is disappearing altogether. Seattle's grocery collapse isn't just an economic failure, it's a warning. It shows what happens when prosperity becomes so concentrated that essential services can no longer survive. Behind the glass towers and billion-dollar companies, a quiet hunger is growing, exposing a reality Seattle can no longer ignore. Even the wealthiest cities can begin to starve from the inside. Number 11. St. Louis, Missouri. St. Louis is now dealing with a grocery collapse so extreme that entire neighborhoods are starting to look more like abandoned shopping strips than places where people actually live. In 2026 alone, the metro area lost more than a dozen grocery stores, including multiple Schnucks locations, Aldi stores, and small independent markets that once served as critical lifelines for low-income families. What's happening here isn't just financial pressure. It's the slow, steady removal of food access from a city that was already vulnerable. The warning signs were visible long before the doors started closing. St. Louis has struggled with population decline for decades, losing more than 300,000 residents since 1970. But the situation has escalated dramatically over the past 3 years. Operating costs for grocers have jumped by 38%, while profit margins have shrunk to below 1%. For many stores, survival has become mathematically impossible. Losses tied to crime paint an even harsher picture. Some locations report weekly losses between $6,000 and $9,000 from theft, vandalism, and repeated security incidents. Insurance costs, once a manageable expense, have surged more than 60% since 2020. As a result, national chains are now labeling entire zip codes as high risk, accelerating their exit from the city. But the deepest damage is felt by the people left behind. North St. Louis, already one of the most underserved urban areas in the country, has effectively turned into a full-scale food desert. Residents there now travel 5 to 8 miles just to find fresh produce. Many are forced to rely on corner stores that charge 30 to 70% more per item, pushing families already below the poverty line into even greater financial strain. St. Louis's poverty rate now stands at 23%, while food insecurity has climbed past 27%, among the highest levels in the Midwest. What's taking shape is a city where inequality determines who eats and who struggles. The Central West End and select suburban areas still enjoy organic markets and upscale grocery options, while neighborhoods just a few miles away are left with boarded-up storefronts and empty parking lots. Grocery stores were never just places to shop. They were community anchors. Their disappearance is a serious warning sign. When essential services collapse, cities don't simply fade, they break apart. St. Louis is unraveling quietly, block by block. And if closures continue through 2026, analysts warn that more than 100,000 residents could soon be living in extreme food deserts. This isn't ordinary urban decline, it's urban abandonment, unfolding in real time. Number 10. Las Vegas, Nevada. Las Vegas has always been synonymous with excess. Neon lights, non-stop casinos, and the promise of endless spending. But in 2026, the most alarming shortages aren't happening on the casino floor. They're showing up in neighborhoods where grocery aisles have vanished altogether. Las Vegas is now experiencing one of the fastest retail breakdowns in the western United States, with more than 15 grocery stores closing across Clark County in just the past year. These shutdowns aren't near the Strip. They're hitting the residential areas where everyday families actually live. The numbers driving this collapse are unforgiving. Las Vegas's rapid population surge, more than 70,000 new residents since 2020, has slammed into sharply rising retail expenses. Commercial rents throughout the valley have jumped 34%, while monthly electricity costs for supermarkets now routinely exceed $29,000. Add in Nevada's extreme summer heat, which pushes refrigeration and cooling demands even higher, and many grocers report total operating costs climbing by roughly 45% since 2021. Then there's the factor that's pushing many stores over the edge: insurance. As property crime increases and climate-related risks drive premiums higher, grocery chains in Las Vegas are now paying 40 to 55% more for coverage. For stores located in lower-income neighborhoods, those added costs have become nearly impossible to manage. In East Las Vegas, North Las Vegas, and parts of Spring Valley, major chains have quietly pulled out, leaving behind empty storefronts covered in "for lease" signs bleaching under the desert sun. Residents are the ones absorbing the damage. In several neighborhoods, the closest full-service grocery store now sits 4 to 6 miles away. Families are increasingly forced to rely on dollar stores and convenience shops that sell food with little nutritional value. Inflation has only made matters worse. Grocery prices in southern Nevada have risen nearly 19% since 2022, one of the steepest increases in the region. Behind the glitter of billion-dollar resorts, Las Vegas is struggling to feed its own population. Affluent areas like Summerlin and Henderson continue to enjoy modern supermarkets and organic grocery chains, while working-class communities are left with shrinking options and rising food insecurity. Las Vegas is confronting a hard reality. A city built on non-stop consumption cannot function when its residents can't access basic necessities. The Strip is thriving, but the neighborhoods behind it are quietly going hungry. Number 9. Los Angeles, California. Los Angeles, a city known worldwide for its culture, influence, and enormous wealth, is now facing a breakdown that's far more dangerous than gridlock or sky-high housing prices. Grocery stores are vanishing at a rate that lays bare the city's severe economic imbalance. In 2026, more than 24 grocery locations across Los Angeles County, including Ralph's, Vons, Food 4 Less, and multiple neighborhood chains, announced permanent closures. For a region home to nearly 10 million people, that kind of loss is nothing short of destabilizing. Running a grocery store in Los Angeles has become a financial nightmare. Commercial rents have climbed more than 50% since 2020, pushing prices in many areas beyond $60 per square foot. Monthly energy bills for large supermarkets now routinely exceed $35,000, driven by relentless summer heat and California's already high utility rates. Layer on statewide minimum wage increases and food inflation that has pushed prices up 27% in just 3 years, and retailers find themselves trapped in a business model that no longer works. Crime and safety concerns are making matters worse. Losses from theft have nearly doubled since 2021, with some inner-city stores reporting shrinkage of more than $10,000 every single week. Insurance premiums in high-risk zip codes have jumped by as much as 70%, forcing companies to walk away from locations that once served as vital community anchors. The human cost of this collapse is severe. In South Los Angeles, Boyle Heights, Watts, and parts of the San Fernando Valley, residents now travel 5 to 7 miles just to buy basic groceries. Public transportation often fails to close the gap, and delivery services remain out of reach for families already struggling to get by. As a result, food insecurity in Los Angeles County has climbed to between 24 and 25%, placing it among the highest rates in the nation. What makes LA's crisis especially stark is the contrast. Affluent neighborhoods like Santa Monica, Pasadena, and Beverly Hills continue to thrive with upscale markets and luxury grocers, while working-class communities are left staring at boarded-up storefronts and empty parking lots. A city celebrated for abundance is rapidly turning into a checkerboard of privilege and deprivation. Los Angeles isn't just losing grocery stores, it's losing its ability to provide one of the most basic forms of stability. And if closures continue through 2026, analysts warn that millions more could be pushed deeper into a crisis hidden behind palm trees, celebrity culture, and Hollywood lights. Number 8. Atlanta, Georgia. Atlanta, long seen as the economic heartbeat of the South, is now confronting a crisis that goes far beyond rising prices or housing pressure. Access to food is breaking down, one neighborhood at a time. What's unfolding in 2026 looks less like a normal retail shift and more like a city being slowly carved out from the inside. Across the metro area, more than a dozen grocery stores, including Kroger, Publix, and several regional chains, have closed their doors, and the pattern is impossible to ignore. The shutdowns are hitting the communities least equipped to absorb them. Atlanta's explosive growth came with serious consequences. Commercial rents for grocery-sized spaces have climbed 38% in just 4 years. At the same time, electricity bills for mid-sized supermarkets now average around $27,000 per month. Inflation has pushed wholesale food prices up nearly 20% since 2022, while labor costs have surged by 25% over the same period. What was once a slim but workable 2% profit margin has flipped into guaranteed losses. When the math no longer works, even the largest corporate chains pull back. But Atlanta's situation is made worse by its geography. Unlike dense northern cities, Atlanta's sprawling layout means the loss of a single grocery store can cut off access for tens of thousands of residents. In South Atlanta and parts of DeKalb County, families now travel 5 to 8 miles just to reach fresh produce. Rideshare costs can exceed $60 a week, and public transit often fails to connect residents to major shopping corridors. Grocery access has effectively become a privilege reserved for those who own a car. This collapse is driving a sharp rise in nutritional inequality. In lower-income zip codes, families are increasingly forced to shop at gas stations and dollar stores where fresh, healthy options simply don't exist. Hospitals in Fulton and DeKalb counties report growing cases of diet-related illnesses, including hypertension, diabetes, and childhood obesity, trends that closely track the disappearance of nearby supermarkets. Atlanta's polished image, defined by skyscrapers, film studios, and expanding tech campuses, now hides a widening divide. Wealth continues to concentrate in the northern parts of the city, while southern neighborhoods struggle to secure basic necessities. Experts warn that if grocery closures continue at the same pace seen in 2026, as much as 30% of South Atlanta could soon be officially classified as a food desert. Atlanta isn't facing a shortage of food. It's facing a shortage of places where its residents can actually buy it. Number 7. Cleveland, Ohio. Cleveland's grocery crisis doesn't come as a sudden shock. It feels like the final stage of a long, slow economic decline. In 2026, a wave of supermarket closures is sweeping through the city's most vulnerable neighborhoods, laying bare just how fragile Cleveland's retail system has become. Chains like Giant Eagle, Dave's Markets, and several independent grocers have either shrunk their store footprints or closed entirely. The result is clear. Entire districts are losing their last sources of full-service food. The financial strain is relentless. Operating costs for Cleveland supermarkets have jumped 33% since 2021, fueled by rising utility bills, supply chain disruptions, and higher wage requirements. A medium-sized grocery that once paid around $13,000 per month for electricity now faces bills exceeding $21,000. On top of that, transportation costs, vital in a city dependent on Midwest to East freight, have risen nearly 40%. For chains already surviving on razor-thin margins, every month is another step further into the red. But Cleveland's crisis is shaped by its demographics. The city is one of the poorest major metros in the United States, with a poverty rate hovering around 30%. That means even small disruptions can have life-altering consequences. In neighborhoods like Glenville, Slavic Village, and parts of West Cleveland, residents now travel 4 to 7 miles just to reach fresh groceries. Those distances are punishing for anyone without a car or with limited mobility. Public buses run infrequently, rideshares are costly, and delivery apps tack on fees many families simply cannot afford. The alternative is often corner stores or convenience shops, where fresh fruits and vegetables are scarce and processed foods dominate the shelves. Food insecurity in Cleveland has surged past 28%, and local food banks report record demand, serving 25 to 35% more families than before the pandemic. Cleveland's grocery collapse is not random. It's the inevitable outcome of decades of disinvestment finally catching up all at once. Wealthier suburbs like Lakewood and Rocky River still enjoy stable markets, while poorer neighborhoods watch their last options disappear. Cleveland isn't just struggling, it's being left behind. Number 6. Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. Philadelphia is teetering on the edge of a quiet but devastating crisis: the rapid disappearance of its grocery stores. In 2026, more than 15 locations across the metro, including ShopRite, Fresh Grocer, and national chains, have either shut their doors or announced upcoming closures. For a city of over 1.5 million residents, the impact is nothing short of seismic. At the heart of Philly's crisis are cost structures that no retailer can sustainably manage. Commercial rents for large format stores have jumped to $35 to $40 per square foot, a 45% increase since 2020. Monthly utility bills frequently top $30,000, while wholesale food inflation remains over 17%. Combine that with high labor costs, taxes, and losses from theft, shrink, and waste, sometimes reaching $9,000 per week, and entire business models begin to collapse under the pressure. Philadelphia's challenge is amplified by extreme neighborhood disparities. In Center City, University City, and wealthier suburbs, grocery stores remain stable and, in some cases, are even expanding. But in North Philadelphia, Kensington, and parts of West Philly, areas already facing poverty rates of 35 to 40%, residents are losing their last full-service supermarkets. Many now travel 5 to 9 miles just to get basic groceries. Public transportation often fails to fill the gap, forcing families to transfer across multiple buses, while delivery fees remain out of reach for low-income households. With options so limited, many are turning to corner stores where prices per calorie are 40 to 60% higher and the nutritional quality is far lower. Food insecurity in Philadelphia has surged past 26%, among the highest rates in any major U.S. city. Local charities report that demand at food banks has risen so sharply that staples often run out by midweek. This collapse isn't only about retail, it's about community infrastructure. Grocery stores serve as anchors, bringing foot traffic, stability, and safety to neighborhoods. When they vanish, entire streets lose their economic heartbeat. Philadelphia is experiencing a slow erosion of daily life, and unlike temporary setbacks, this damage is structural and long-lasting. Number 5. Baltimore, Maryland. Baltimore's grocery collapse isn't the result of a single bad year. It's the inevitable eruption of long-building pressure. In 2026, the city experienced more than a dozen grocery closures, including major locations like Giant, Safeway, Shoppers, and multiple independent markets that once served as lifelines for entire neighborhoods. But Baltimore's unraveling feels different from other cities. Here, the store closures aren't just signs of economic strain, they're evidence of deep structural abandonment. Operating costs have skyrocketed. Grocery retailers now face utility bills topping $28,000 per month, a 41% jump since 2020. Commercial rents along retail corridors have climbed 34%, security expenses have doubled, and losses from theft in certain neighborhoods now reach $12,000 to $15,000 weekly. Insurance providers have pulled out of multiple Baltimore zip codes entirely, forcing chains to self-insure, a step only the largest corporations can attempt, and even they are retreating. The human toll is the most devastating in the nation. Baltimore's overall poverty rate sits around 23%, but in neighborhoods like Sandtown, Upton, and Broadway East, it spikes above 35%. Many of these areas were already food deserts, and the 2026 closures have pushed them into what analysts now call food dead zones. Residents must travel 6 to 9 miles just to find fresh produce. For households without cars, that means 2-hour bus trips or relying on corner stores where prices per calorie are 50 to 80% higher. Food insecurity is skyrocketing, now affecting more than 1 in 3 households. Local food banks are overwhelmed, reporting demand surges of 40 to 50%. Each grocery closure ripples outward. Jobs vanish, foot traffic disappears, crime rises, and neighborhoods lose their economic gravity. Baltimore's grocery crisis isn't merely a retail problem. It's a collapse of confidence. Retailers are sending the message that residents have long felt. The city's most vulnerable communities have been left with no economic buffer, no safety net, and now, no access to basic food. This is Baltimore's breaking point. It isn't loud or dramatic, but its impact is quietly devastating. Number 4. Memphis, Tennessee. Memphis is facing a retail collapse that's reshaping how residents survive day to day. In 2026, more than 10 major grocery stores, including Kroger, Super One, and long-standing neighborhood markets, shut their doors across the metro area. But what's happening in Memphis isn't simply another chapter in the story of inflation. It's a crisis driven by extreme inequality and soaring urban operating costs. Memphis consistently ranks among the poorest major cities in the U.S., with poverty hovering around 25%, making the closure of full-service grocery stores particularly catastrophic. The financial math is brutal. Utility bills for mid-sized supermarkets now top $26,000 per month. Insurance costs have jumped 45 to 60%, and supply chain expenses remain 20 to 25% higher than pre-2020 levels. For stores surviving on razor-thin 1 to 2% profit margins, Memphis has simply become unprofitable. What sets Memphis apart is the concentration of closures in already fragile communities. In South Memphis, Fraser, and Orange Mound, entire neighborhoods have lost their last major grocery stores. Residents must now travel 7 miles or more just to reach fresh food, a near impossible journey in a city where bus service is often unreliable. Families are increasingly forced to rely on fast food outlets and gas stations for daily calories, fueling what public health officials describe as a looming health crisis. Rates of diabetes, hypertension, and obesity, already among the highest in the country, are climbing even higher. Meanwhile, more affluent areas like East Memphis remain stable, with some even adding boutique grocery and specialty markets. The contrast highlights the city's deep economic divide. One side gaining choice, the other losing access to basic necessities. Local food assistance organizations are struggling to keep up, reporting 30 to 40% increases in emergency grocery requests. Analysts warn that if these trends continue, nearly half of Memphis's low-income neighborhoods could be officially classified as food deserts by 2026. Memphis isn't merely facing a grocery crisis, it's confronting a humanitarian one, with its most vulnerable residents bearing the brunt first. Number 3. Kansas City, Missouri. Kansas City is quietly enduring one of the most overlooked grocery collapses in the country. In 2026, the metro area lost more than a dozen supermarkets, including Price Chopper, Hy-Vee, and several Sunfresh locations that once anchored entire neighborhoods. Yet the real crisis isn't the number of closures, it's where they're happening. Operating costs have become unbearable for retailers. Utilities for a mid-sized KC store now top $24,000 per month, a 35% increase since 2021. Insurance premiums, particularly in higher-risk zip codes, have jumped nearly 50%, while weekly losses from shrinkage frequently hit $7,000 or more. Even regional chains that were once considered stable are being forced to abandon unprofitable corridors. Kansas City's geography magnifies the problem. The sprawling metro, divided by state lines and poorly connected by transit, means that when a grocery store closes, the next option can be 6, 8, or even 10 miles away. In East Side neighborhoods and parts of Wyandotte County, where poverty rates top 30%, those distances create barriers that most families cannot overcome. Food insecurity has now climbed to 24%, and local food assistance centers are seeing record-high demand. In some areas, pantries are serving twice as many households as they did before the pandemic. Meanwhile, suburban enclaves like Overland Park and Liberty continue to prosper, adding upscale markets, while inner-city districts lose their last full-service grocery stores. Kansas City's crisis isn't loud or dramatic, it's incremental. But step by step, neighborhood by neighborhood, the city is splitting into two worlds. One where families have choices, and one where they have none. Number 2. Chicago, Illinois. Chicago's grocery crisis is escalating into one of the most alarming urban collapses in the country. In 2026, more than 20 grocery stores across the city and suburbs have closed or announced permanent shutdowns, affecting neighborhoods from Englewood to West Garfield Park and parts of the South Shore. These aren't temporary setbacks, they're structural failures with long-term consequences. Operating a grocery store in Chicago has become prohibitively expensive. Utility bills for large supermarkets now exceed $32,000 per month, while commercial rents have surged 40% in just 4 years. Losses from theft have nearly doubled, driving insurance premiums up 60 to 70%, particularly in high-risk zip codes. With profit margins already below 2%, many grocery retailers can no longer survive. The impact hits hardest on the city's south and west sides, where poverty rates range from 25 to 30% and transportation options are limited. Each store closure removes a critical lifeline. Some residents now travel 6 to 8 miles to reach affordable groceries, a journey that often involves long bus rides or expensive ride shares, costs many families simply cannot absorb. Food insecurity in Chicago has risen above 20%, and local community organizations are reporting record-high demand for assistance. The contrast across the city is stark. While affluent areas enjoy gourmet markets and private delivery services, working-class neighborhoods are increasingly starved of fresh produce. Chicago isn't merely experiencing a retail adjustment. It's seeing the slow breakdown of the infrastructure that allows residents to survive. And the neighborhoods hit first are the ones least equipped to endure it. Number 1. San Francisco, California. San Francisco, one of the wealthiest cities on the planet, is now facing a grocery store collapse that lays bare just how distorted its economy has become. In 2026, over a dozen major grocers, including Safeway, Whole Foods, and several local chains, have announced closures across the city and the surrounding Bay Area. The causes create a perfect storm. Commercial rents in San Francisco remain among the highest in the nation, often surpassing $70 per square foot. Operating a mid-sized supermarket now costs more than $40,000 per month in utilities alone. California's soaring insurance premiums, up 50% over the past 2 years, combined with theft losses that can reach $10,000 weekly, have made even corporate giants unable to keep their doors open. The impact is uneven across the city. Affluent neighborhoods like Pacific Heights and Noe Valley still enjoy premium markets and specialty stores, while districts such as the Tenderloin, Bayview Hunters Point, and the Mission are losing essential grocery options at an alarming pace. In parts of the southeast city, residents now face 4 to 6 miles to reach a full-service grocery store, a crushing challenge for households without cars. Food insecurity in San Francisco has climbed to nearly 18%, a striking figure for a city filled with billionaires. Local nonprofits report overwhelming demand, with some food banks serving 40% more families than just a year ago. San Francisco's crisis exposes a harsh contradiction. Massive wealth concentrated in a city where basic access to food is collapsing. The glitter of prosperity remains, but the ground beneath it is cracking.